My name's Abigail Bartley. I'm doing my thesis over The Idiot by Dostoyevsky, also The Symposium and the Republic by Plato. And I'm going to cover ideas such as beauty, transcendentalism, some concepts of Russian orthodoxy, and ruin. All men spend their lives in search of some form of transcendental beauty, regardless of whether one is conscious of it or not. Each individual's understanding and recognition of this urge is irrelevant. The desire is innate and will follow wherever one goes. It is only through thorough examination and confrontation of these ideas that one will find what they truly need. This recognition of beauty and one's desire for such is the only way man can achieve true happiness. Dostoyevsky's The Idiot presents ideas about mankind's search for beauty, namely how this search can be corrupted and can ultimately cause the ruin of not only one's life, but of those around them and basically everything around them. Beauty is something that exists in Plato's realm of ideas. The realm of ideas is the metaphysical concept which asserts that pure and perfect ideas of objects and concepts exist in a world or dimension outside of our own. And what we experience and create day to day are simply mimics of those pure concepts. You might be sitting in a chair, but if you think about it, you're merely sitting in a representation as close as we can get to the pure concept of the chair which exists in Plato's realm of ideas. The object is merely a representation of a pure idea. This is the basic concept. Plato believes anything that represents pure ideas of virtue, such as innocence, perseverance, honesty, basically all virtues, are objects or concepts that can be considered beautiful. Love and compassion fall under this, as they transcend as virtue from the realm of ideas. This is from Plato's Symposium and the Republic. A search for beauty is a search for goodness, and thus for happiness. These are things that transcend beauty from the world of ideas. All men desire happiness, desire goodness, desire beauty, desire stability, and all these good things that you imagine when you imagine your life down the line. This is what beauty both represents and fully encompasses. It's all that's good. Things that represent beauty are not just the societal and cultural accepted aesthetics of any given time. That is just simply a small subset of what is beautiful. Many of the characters in The Idiot are shown to function within a completely false or corrupted understanding of their desires. Mishkin himself is the only figure shown in the story to see the world and those around him for what they are. Confused, broken, ruined, often hurting and lashing out, searching desperately to possess what is beautiful, good, stable, happy. Through the lens of Mishkin's understanding of the characters and the events around him, one can see his judgments of these people and these events. Because Dostoyevsky was a very sickly child, so was the prince, Dostoyevsky wrote Mishkin to be, in essence, kind of a self-insert into the story. He projects a lot of his own struggles in his life onto Prince Mishkin. But Prince Mishkin's representation in the story is not simply limited to that. Dostoyevsky was also a Russian Orthodox Christian. Russian Orthodoxy is unlike many American-based religions. He believes strongly in the purifying properties of suffering and the strong connection beautiful physical objects have to the divine. The Orthodox Church has a very specific idea that pertains to this called, I don't know Russian, Yerodovy, or the Holy Fool. The figure of the Holy Fool is basically someone that acts contrary to the current culture of Christians around them. They act in a way that exemplifies God, causes those around them to either despise them or reject them, or to compare this person that is living contrary to current society, compare this person to God and how they've been led astray by certain things. These figures appear all throughout culture and fiction and history. It could be a holy fool, could be that special person that lives outside of the day-to-day sort of concepts of how people usually act. That kind of character is everywhere. It could be like Mr. Williams Laboratorium, like Doctor Who, like all these like dudes that are different. This is what Dostoyevsky masterfully provokes with his representation of Prince Mishkin. Not only that, but Prince Mishkin can also be read as a representation of Jesus Christ himself. Mishkin as a character is a representation of Dostoyevsky's idealized human, with a deep and insightful higher understanding about the world around him, kindness, empathy, compassion, and humbleness. Mishkin represents absolutely every virtue imaginable, the utter and Platonist embodiment of truth, goodness, and beauty. Not only does he question and interact with those around him in a logical, truth-seeking manner like Socrates, his innocence, overall goodwill, and virtuous nature, combined with his unfortunate end, kind of like being a martyr, all establish him not only as a figure much like Socrates, but also a figure much like Jesus Christ himself. Throughout the novel, Mishkin encounters many perplexing moral situations, including his eventful false conviction of murder, resulting in a permanent confinement to a mental institution. What overall dooms Mishkin to his fate is not a mistake of his own, but the fact that everyone else around him acts without concern for anyone but themselves. Like Mishkin, they live their lives in a search for beauty and compassion and love and stability and all these good things that you want in your life. But because of their base misunderstandings of these concepts, they often end up severely corrupted and severely unhappy. This result of unhappiness from misunderstanding of one's search and one's corruption of what they want, their misunderstanding of this, is what I will refer to as ruin, or being ruined. Rogozhin is another character in the novel. He, in many ways, is a direct narrative foil to the prince. He completely opposes the innocent and good-hearted nature of Mishkin, and at a certain point, the two men find themselves vying for the attention with intentions to marry the same beautiful woman named Nastasia. Rogozhin expresses his affection for Nastasia by drunkenly leering at her, crashing her dinner parties, causing scenes, and overall making a ruckus about showing his affection. This is a perfect example of a misguided search for beauty. In Rogozhin's mind, his search is justified and his actions are making sense as they follow all the ideas of what he thinks he wants and what he thinks he needs. Yet these desires lay unexamined in his heart, lust residing where unconditional love must be. And this drive in a man's heart is what ultimately causes the two lovers' demise. Mishkin expresses his love for Nastasia by making promises to her, discussing her deeper insecurities about her place in high society as a former item of her abuser's estate, and vowing to respect her all his life. He does make that promise in strictly worded text. Mishkin's feelings toward Nastasia, unlike Rogozhin, are not merely sexual or even romantic. He loves and respects her unconditionally despite her flaws or her hardships in the past. He loves her because of these issues, because of how much stronger she is made from them, and because of that, he gives her a completely new appreciation on life, at least for a short time, until she becomes corrupted again. Not the point. Rogozhin is a wonderful example, not of a ruined man, but of a man whose pursuits and search for beauty in the form of love, in the form of stability that having a spouse gives you, in the form of wealth, of the very hefty dowry that Nastasia has over her head, has been tainted and obscured by unjust desires. It is clear that Mishkin is a foil to Rogozhin, as they differ in every single way, and the reader is made to learn about one character by examining the other. Rogozhin is used to depict the world around Mishkin, and how these surroundings are not only treacherous, but also filled with corrupt and immoral people. When Rogozhin drags Mishkin down by eventually leading him to be sentenced to a mental institution because of a false accusation of murder, Rogozhin does not simply cause the ruin of one man. He causes the ruin of every virtue and beautiful thing that Mishkin represents. The gluttony and wrath in Rogozhin's heart is not the villain of the story. The corruption of the good desires of one man is the true villain of the heathen. It is up to each individual in their own time to examine their searches for beauty in their own lives. One must investigate and narrow down their desires, and through this, not only will they learn the essentials of their own soul, but also they will become leaps and bounds closer to achieving what drives them. Those of us who struggle with an unexamined desire in our own lives must commit to making the effort to understand what our true intentions are. We must become studious and learned of our hearts, and we must establish the foundations of our understanding in the correct ideas of beauty, love, and compassion. If one yearns for romantic love, they must not fall into the pitfalls of lust and objectification of a partner or possessiveness. If one desires to achieve aesthetic beauty, they must not fall into the pitfalls of bodily bastardization. If one desires to be happy, they must not fall into the pitfalls of turning to illicit substances or turning to temporary forms of happiness. One must try to be like Mishkin, kind, humble, and intelligent, and compassionate, one that represents the ideals of Platonic beauty as a whole. Men cannot be perfect. There is no helping a simple mistake and temporary lapse of human judgment. We are not all direct metaphors for Jesus Christ himself. We are human, and we have imperfections. But one can expect self-awareness and self-criticism from themselves, and commit to one's betterment. In the same way, one must visit the doctor to maintain their health. One must check their own motivations and check with themselves. Am I headed for beauty or ruin?
Marvelous. Well done, Ms. Bartley. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Q&A now.
I have a question. So from your thesis and kind of your reading of these different things, do you think that it is impossible for somebody who doesn't have a Christian worldview to understand beauty essentially as beauty is, say the person of Michigan? Or that if they have any understanding of beauty, it's always going to be tainted because there's not a high ideal that it can aspire to?
I think that, let me put it this way. For about 80% of the time that my thesis existed, it existed completely without me putting any reference to church inside of it. I had to be instructed to put information in the church inside of it. So what I originally based all my ideas about beauty and goodness and achieving these things on was Plato's The Symposium and the Republic and what was already in the book. Mm-hmm. One does not have to be immersed in religious ideology to recognize beauty and recognize that they must search within themselves to check themselves, and one doesn't need religion in this specific instance to be happy and to achieve what they want. They just have to, just like any religious person, they have to study these texts, study within themselves, and be very militant about what they're doing and what their intentions are. Go ahead.
So you talk about beauty, and is that kind of the pursuit of beauty that is like the fulfilling thing to do, like specifically beauty, or is it higher ideals in general?
For the most part, in my thesis, I used beauty to represent those higher ideals. Okay. Virtue, goodness, godliness in regards to some of the ideas I presented about Michigan. Maybe that's not the way Plato specifically put it, but in my mind, I sort of presented beauty as all these good ideas wrapped up. You could probably sub a lot of where I use beauty, you could say goodness.
Okay.
Any other questions from our online viewers or in person? Ms. Bartley, so with that concept of the Yuddha, the holy fool, that sort of figure who exists outside of culture in a way that's an affront to materialistic consumers, people, where do you see modern examples of that in our society? Who's someone you could say, this is what a holy fool would look like in
Kanye West.
Why?
No. I mean, just that was a joke. But
Okay.
but
Give me a real example.
It would be. I don't think it would. Someone that you would compare your own pursuit of godliness to, and be sort of thinking about, this person is pursuing things differently than the way I've always pursued them, but they seem to be doing better than me, or they seem to be happier than me, or blah blah blah. It's a really good question. A modern example, like a real life example?
Yeah, who's someone that you would say, this is a holy fool, this is someone who's an affront to our entire debased paradigm of reality, and they're actively going against it, and it seems to be almost transcendentally good, even though it seems like a weird person. Or do you think we would even recognize something like that in our culture?
I think it's hard to recognize that because the question you're asking, it seems like you want an answer like someone in popular culture that I can think of ultimately. Like when I said Kanye West, I mean he embodies some of those ideas, but I don't think I would compare my own pursuit of goodness with his and be like he's doing it right. But I think that the true holy fools are not celebrities. They're not really like politicians or anything like that. I think most holy fools are people in our own lives. People around us that are yes.
I often think of the gentleman who's at the Reichstag in Berlin with Hitler giving a big speech, and you have 100,000 Germans who are hailing Hitler, and there's one guy in the crowd going like this. He's eventually going to lose his life because of it.
Holy fools, I'm going to say this, because it is a Russian Orthodox Christian concept, I wouldn't feel remiss in saying that most holy fools don't, like that man who probably had a very terrible fate after that picture was taken, or Mishkin, probably they don't have the happiest repercussions or happiest endings in regards to what they do. Like Mishkin wasn't a celebrity, he wasn't a rich man. He was a prince, but he wasn't. I mean, he had one relative, and he didn't have anything. He was the fool. It's a direct English translation, but really they were calling him like the R word. Like that's what they were saying about him. Yeah.
The R word.
He wasn't a wealthy or successful man. He ended up dying in a mental institution. He was a holy fool, but he wasn't. I would say he was the lowest of the low. He was like someone you look at and like, maybe sorry.
No, that was very well said. Okay, are there any other questions? We got about 1 minute left. All right, let's give Ms. Bartley a round of applause. That was amazing.
Woo! That's my girl.